Hey guys, welcome back.
Welcome back to Inspired Delusions.
How have you guys been feeling?
Hope you've been being brave.
Brave, delusional, doing the scary thing,
Yes.
putting yourself out there.
Yes. Well, we are really excited today because we have our first official guest.
Woo!
Woo! You guys are about to learn some good stuff from our dear friend, Christa.
Mm-hmm.
So, Christa, we'd love for you to kind of introduce yourself and give us a little bit about your story, but we're excited today to talk about pivoting and trying new things and being brave.
Yeah.
And
This was part 2 of like being brave and like really putting yourself out there, trusting in yourself, believing in yourself, and ultimately having fun.
Yeah.
Because once again, guys, we create the reality we're living in.
Yes.
So,
yes. Hello, Christa.
Hi, guys. I love all of that. Hi, guys. I'm Christa. I'm a social strategist at Refinery 29 Unbothered. Currently, I'm also a DJ Chameleon on all socials. And yeah, I'm very excited to have this conversation. I know all about the pivot. I know all about putting yourself out there. So ready to chop it up.
Amazing. Well, okay. So, do we want to start with, would you want to talk a little bit about your journey into being brave enough to pivot, being a successful DJ now, right? You really leaned into that, and that was something that did it come out of the blue?
A little bit, yeah. So one thing about me is I'm always trying like something new. I'm always trying a new thing. The way I kind of have like lived my life up until this point has been just kind of like, oh, that looks cool, and then I'll go try it. So that's like my resume is very disjointed. It's very zigzaggy because every time I'll try something, and if it's not quite right, I'm like, okay, that looks cool, and then I'll go over here and see what it's like, and if maybe it's not quite right, that looks cool. So that's kind of how I ended up in media. I work in media now. I don't have a media background. I didn't go to school for communications or anything like with that in mind. I kind of have always just like moved towards what interests me and what I enjoy. So at first that was music. I used to work at a talent agency when I used to live in LA. Super still interested in the music industry. I think I found my way to be involved in it as a DJ, which I think is a much better way for me as opposed to representation. But music looked cool, so I went to work at a talent agency, and that wasn't quite right. So I wanted to work in social, so I found a job that let me make social content for them, and then I lost that job in the pandemic, and LA wasn't quite right, so I moved to New York with no job and hoping that I would figure something out in a couple months, and I did, and I got a social management job finally. And then that was not right. And so then I was like, okay, what am I interested in? Black culture, women's issues, astrology, spirituality. I was like, what can combine that? And then like, here comes this opportunity to work for Refinery 29 Unbothered, which kind of like at least touches on all of that, which was really, really exciting. This was like almost 4 years ago now, though. I've been there for a minute. And so I moved that way because that interested me. And then when DJing came up super organically. When I moved to New York, it was pandemic, like I said, so everything was locked down. But as soon as things opened back up, I really wanted to experience the city and like especially nightlife, because I wasn't really like a nightlife girly. Like I was very much a late bloomer when it comes to like being outside, going out. So coming to New York for the first time, well, not first time, I was born here, but as an adult, coming to New York as an adult for the first time and like experiencing, especially in like the Black community and the African diasporic community, I'm Ghanaian as well. I didn't grow up around a ton of other Ghanaians that weren't my family. So to move to New York and be in spaces where like everyone is listening to Afro beats and everyone is from like the entire continent and everyone is connected in these ways. I'm looking at a party of a sea of 1,000 Black people. I've never seen that in my life. So I was like having the time of my life. Like truly it was really like an experience for me and like integral to like who I am today, honestly. Like it sounds like partying is so like frivolous, but it really wasn't for me. And so one of the big things I noticed going out was how big of a part of that experience the DJs were, which I'd never seen before. Like that, I grew up in Ohio. That wasn't really the case there. I don't know if that's the case in LA. I don't really think so to the level it is here. But if it is, I wasn't paying attention like that when I lived in LA. So New York was the first time I was like, oh, not only are these events and parties like shaping my entire like in experience in New York, but these DJs are creating the soundtrack to that. Now, if I hear a certain song, I'm transported back to like summer 2021 and like feel this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I just started noticing, I was making friends with some DJs, never in my mind thinking I should be one. I just thought it was cool. And then someone just like in an aside, I think it was my boss actually, in an aside when I like made a playlist for work, and she's like, you should be a DJ. And I was like, huh.
You know what?
You know what? And so then that was in my brain for a few months where I was percolating like whether to buy. I like did some research. Controllers were costing like $200 to $300. So I was like, all right, let me just, one thing about me, I'm going to start a hobby and I'm going to abandon it in 6 months. So I had to decide like, okay, am I going to spend 300 and like, am I just going to abandon this, or is it something I'm going to stick with? But I just wanted to try it. And like, you know, sometimes I'm like, okay, if I learned the skill and I kind of let it go, I can always revisit it if I want. I started an art business in 2020 and was like selling all this art. And then 3 months later, I was like, I don't want to make any more art. And I didn't anymore. Like, I'm just that type of person. So I bought a controller for Christmas and just like didn't expect to really go anywhere with it besides learning the skill. But I ended up just loving it so much so fast. And then was lucky to have people around me that were willing to teach me and give me like a shot at playing free parties at first, but then quickly getting to play like actual parties, and then pairing that with the social content, because I've been a social strategist now for like 7 years. Pairing that with my like knowledge of social media, I think is how I grew so quickly on social media. And when it came to my DJing, because I like already had that social strategy knowledge and I just paired it with this new skill I loved, and voila. So it was very organic. It wasn't planned. Yeah. But here I am.
You mentioned earlier that you work and run Unbothered's page, which for the audience, like, it is such a good page. I remember that was like one of my first things on Instagram I followed when I too also just like really wanted to get connected with women, and specifically Black women, and like stay in touch with just things that were going on in society, but in a very light and safe way. So that, and I mean, I didn't even know you, right? Like I just saw that. And then naturally when I met you, I was like, you kind of feel familiar. Like, I've seen your street interviews. Yes. So I love that page, and kudos to you for that. But second thing is, how beautiful is it that when you put yourself in spaces where you were trying to be more yourself, you're trying to discover more things about yourself, you're trying to connect with other people, that you like literally it fell in front of you, like quite your opportunity literally. Now, right?
Quite literally, yeah. Like I always so say, aligned. People used to say like, oh wow, New York really agrees with you, and it does. Yeah. It is the environment, but I was like, no, it's the spaces that I can now be in that I didn't have access to when I grew up in Ohio, when I didn't have access to in LA, because I was working in Hollywood, which is very white. And like, I moved here and made it really a conscious effort. I was like, I need to be surrounded by Black people. And then I just like blossomed in so many ways very quickly. And that's honestly my advice to like, I tell my little brother this all the time, because he's in Ohio still, he's in college. And I'm just like, just make sure you surround yourself with like people who you really resonate with, because you will blossom and grow so much faster, and it will be organic. You don't have to like have a plan per se, but like being in the space alone is enough. Like, it's just like having the right environment to grow, basically.
Yeah, totally. We just recorded an episode about doing the scary thing, and part of that is being authentic. And I feel like kind of what you're saying of like being in spaces where you feel like you can be your most authentic self is probably really important as well to your evolution and to your growth. So yeah, that's really beautiful.
Also, like finding that authentic self. Like, I didn't know exactly what I was seeking. I just knew that up until that point, I hadn't really been in a space that I felt super comfortable. So I was just seeking a place where I felt comfortable and kind of growing into that. There's no like, you know, because it's easy to find another environment and then just like change yourself to fit that environment too. And then that's still not authentic. That's still not helpful. But I just kind of was like, and I'm still looking, like I will, and we can get into that. I'm still looking for the places where I can feel like I'm settled and like, you know, I have that solid community, or I have, you know, this solid interest, or any number of things that kind of make up who you are. But it's just a matter of not compromising yourself when you do get into the environment, so that you can really be able to recognize when it's familiar and when it's you.
Yeah, totally.
Something we always say is like following the breadcrumbs. Like, it doesn't have to be this big, huge jump. It doesn't have to be this big, huge change. It's just, you know, one day being like, oh, this kind of feels right, and leaning that way. And then one moment you'll be like, wait, that kind of feels right. And, you know, you move and move and move until one day you kind of wake up and you're like, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Like, this makes so much sense. Thank God things maybe crumbled in one way. Like, I know maybe 4 years ago, you weren't thinking, oh my gosh, job after job after job that I maybe lost, or it doesn't really align. But now here you are, in the city of your dreams,
Yep.
literally following your dreams, right?
Yeah,
How
literally that.
cool.
It is very cool. And also to your point about like following breadcrumbs until you get to a place where you look around and you're like, wow, like I really built something that like feels like me. I definitely want to say like that's such a beautiful moment to get to. And I think as much as you can enjoy that space, sit in that as long as you can, but also eventually that's going to change. Like you also are going to grow and evolve, and eventually the life you built isn't going to match who you are now, even though you worked towards it and this is what you wanted, but now you've grown and now you're going to want slightly different things, and now you got to figure out what those things are. And it's a constant, I'm a Scorpio, so constant evolution, constant transformation, death and rebirth. It's like in my DNA. I have no choice. And that's something I'm really sitting with now, where like you said, I've like built, chased my dreams. I've built this like life that I really, really enjoy, that I was intentional about, in a city that I love and really wanted to live in. But now I'm in a space where it's like, okay, I'm changing. So what are my new goals? Like what is going to make me feel settled now? What is going to make me feel connected now? And it's different. The answers are different. I'm trying to figure out the new answers. So I think people have to give themselves permission for that. Cause I was really honestly down on myself about feeling that way for a while. Like a couple months. Cause I was like, isn't this what I wanted? Like, what is my problem? Like, what is going on? I'm like, I found all this success as a DJ. I like have a great relationship. I've got friends. I'm living in New York. I have a cool job. Like, why am I feeling unfulfilled? And it's like, girl, because you changed, because you're different.
Yeah, getting comfortable with the change and with the evolution. I think, like you're saying, you're a Scorpio, so maybe it's just inherent. Like you have to, it's constant. You have to be doing that, right? But I think that's so crucial for everyone. So again, you're a Scorpio, so maybe that comes to you like by force almost, so like you have to do it. But do you feel like there's things that you have done to help you evolve and help you get comfortable with the growth? Like we've talked about, you've pivoted a few times, and you having the courage to continuously like try new things and put yourself out there, I think is like really, really, really brave.
Thank you. I think those are 2 points. So the growth one, I think it does help that I've always been the type to change gears and not think too hard about it. I always take calculated risk. I'm never like, let me blow up my life and just like, I'm always like, here's a plan. And like when I moved to New York, I moved here with no job. It's just kind of a crazy thing to do in a pandemic, but I did have a savings and I gave myself a time limit. And I said, okay, if I don't figure it out in that time, then we're going back to Ohio and we'll regroup. So it's always like, it's never irresponsible. I like to make sure I add that in, like, it's within reason. We're just making plans for ourselves. But I do think it helps that I've always been the type to just be able to like, all right, this is not working out. Let's try something new. I think the most important thing that I learned recently is that I had like an unconscious, like, I had ascribed like an unconscious negative association with changing so much. Like, and that it only kind of reared its head once I entered my 30s, where I suddenly started to feel like shame about the fact that like, here I am searching for like a new thing again, or here I am trying a new thing at, not even like at my age, but in like, shouldn't I have it figured out by now? Shouldn't I like know my path by now? But I think letting go of that, and sometimes you're just not gonna be the person with like one prescribed path. Like sometimes you're gonna be the person that is always trying new things, has to be doing multiple different things. Like you just have to know yourself and not follow anyone else's timeline, and not like ascribe to anyone else's like definitions of what's successful and what's not. And then you're golden. Like as soon as I like let that shame go, I felt so much better. And I was like, oh, so really all I have to do is just like figure out what I want. Like I don't have to.
Yes.
I don't have to like decide one career path tomorrow and then like start, like it could take me however long, and like I could find it, and then in 5 years new one. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's always, and that's okay. Like that's more than okay. All you have to do is just like accept that about yourself. Acceptance.
A lot of our audience is like late 20s to like early 30s, and I feel like this is something that we all kind of go through, where it's so many of your friends are in different areas of their life, whether that's settled, married, having children, whether that's a new job, whether that's going out all the time, whether inside. Like it looks so different for all of us, but it's such a small age gap where kind of all eyes are on us. Like, what's going on? What are you doing? Tell us what your plan is. And I think a lot of people can relate in this age group of you said it, like the shame of like, okay, like there's so much changing, what's going on, like, and it ultimately is a choice to just hone in and focus on what you want, and that's the best thing you can do for yourself and others around you, is to just choose and be like, this is what I want to do, like I love this makes me happy, and then just leaving other people's opinions at the door, leaving your negative opinions at the door, and then just keep moving through, because you literally never know what could happen tomorrow, the next day, a year from now. So
yeah,
I love
exactly.
that.
Even giving yourself permission if you don't know what it is you love yet, or if you don't know what makes you happy, like releasing the shame of not knowing what that is yet, giving yourself permission to explore and find the thing. You got to try stuff or you're not going to find it.
Yeah.
You're not going to stumble upon like a new skill or talent or love. Like I always say, remember when I realized I love jazz music, which was like 2 years ago, I like had never really like sat and listened to jazz. And it was like such a like core memory for me, because I just realized like I love jazz music and I didn't know until I was in my late 20s. And I love it. So I'm like, oh wow, I'm gonna constantly be finding like there's so many more things that I love that I have literally no idea about yet.
Yeah.
There's so many more things that I'm gonna be, like me discovering DJing in my late 20s. There's so many things I'm gonna be good at that I've never even touched, never even thought about in my life. 5 years ago, never thought about DJing in my life. I saw DJs, oh, that's cool. And I kept it pushing. There was no part of me that was like, oh, I should try that. And like it just kind of like came to me. I tried it and discovered I loved it. So it's like you always have to give yourself that permission to explore so that you can find the things you love.
Yeah, that's really good. Giving yourself permission to explore. Ooh, and I love that you're saying, there's things that we have no idea that we are going to find things that we love. And then you keep continuously finding new things that you love, and your life just keeps getting better and better and better. Okay, as two people who are currently living in LA, but we both love New York also, I wanted to kind of touch on your experience living in Los Angeles. And we were just talking offline of like, you ended up making the move to New York and you ended up thriving in New York. So kind of tell us a little bit about that, if that was scary or that was also another pivot, and how, and what happened there.
Yeah, so honestly, going to LA was more of a pivot because it wasn't in my immediate plan. Actually, it was never in my plan, LA specifically. It was my plan to leave Ohio, but it wasn't my plan to go to LA. I always wanted to go to New York. I was born in New York. I did not grow up here, but I just used to go back all the time. I just love New York City so much. I already knew that, so I always wanted to live there. But when I ended up going to grad school. I went to USC and got my master's in marketing there. And I was applying to a few grad programs, and LA was the only city that I've always been a city person. So LA was the only city that felt like, all right, well, if it's not going to be New York, maybe I should try LA. Like the other options were like, I can't remember, Texas. I think I applied to one in like Kentucky. I was like, I don't think that's really what I'm looking for. But it was kind of actually, honestly, I love the story, even though you didn't ask, but I just like how like traumatic events will like push you into the place you're supposed to be. So I was in a relationship with my college boyfriend in Ohio. He had moved to Texas, and he wanted me to move to Texas because he was like, I'm tired of long distance. And mind you, this was not a good relationship. But me, I'm delusional in a bad way. And I'm, you know what? Yes, let me move to Texas. But something in my brain was like, you cannot just up and move to Texas for this boy. So I said, okay, let me get my master's degree. My dad already really wanted me to. I was like, I'll use school as my means to move there. So University of Texas, Austin, one of the best business schools in the country. I said, I'm going there. So I study my ass off, get great GRE scores. I get into University of Texas, Austin, and this man breaks up with me. He said it's too real. And we had been together like 3 years. So I'm devastated. I thought I was marrying this man. Laughable today. But then baby Christa, she's only 22. She thought she was marrying that man. And out of spite almost, I was like, I didn't study my ass off for months just to not go to school, even though I didn't really want to go to school. Like I was using the school to move for the man, but in my brain, I was like, I can't not go to school just because I got dumped. That's crazy. And so I looked for other programs, and University of Southern California still had 2 weeks left in the application window. And I just applied, got an interview, and was accepted within 3 weeks. It was never my plan to go to LA. Like It was truly like out of getting dumped. And then I was just moving to LA. And the whole time I was like, this is a mistake. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I moving away from all my friends and family when I'm literally depressed and heartbroken? And it was hard. It was not an easy transition. But honestly, after that, I didn't have much fear when I moved to New York 4 years later, because I had done that. And that was probably the hardest move I'll probably ever do. I was not in a great place. and LA is a very hard city to make friends in. But I knew once I did that, and I think that's kind of like a pattern. Like once I do the scary thing, I know I can, and then the next time is like not nearly as scary.
Yeah.
So when it came time for me to move to New York, I always wanted to, like, my plan after grad school was to move right to New York when I graduated. But then I got the talent agency job in LA, and it was such a cool opportunity that I felt like I couldn't say no. And then when it was time for me to leave that job, I was applying to jobs in New York, but most of the interviews I was getting were in LA, and I was kind of having like a limited belief a little bit about like finding work in New York. So I was like, oh, let me just take the job in LA. It's easier. Like I'm getting interviews here, even though it's not really where I wanted to be. So when the pandemic hit and everything locked down and it felt like I would never be able to go, I was like so heartbroken. And I was like, I waited way too long. Cause I even like, I think I wrote in my like 2020 vision board at the end of 2019 that like moved to New York. So when the pandemic hit, I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to get there.
No.
I was so sad, but then I lost the job I had due to the pandemic in LA, and I was like kind of dilly-dallying, paying rent, kind of mildly looking for jobs, and kind of just realized, wait, I could just move to New York. I was like, I don't have a job anyway. Like I'm paying rent with no job anyway, so why don't I just pay rent with no job in the city I'd rather be in? Like free will, I can do it. And the next month, I was in New York. I like literally found an apartment on Facebook. A Facebook group, moved in with these like random girls, but they were so nice. And it was like actually really nice to have people in a 4-bedroom, but it was locked down. So it was nice to have people there. But it was just like very much me just saying I can actually do whatever I want. I think the pandemic was a reset for a lot of people in terms of like realizing free will.
Totally.
And realizing like you actually don't have to go the like direct path that everyone follows. You can actually literally do whatever you want. So that was me doing that and moving to New York. But I wasn't scared. I was very excited actually.
Yeah.
More scared I wouldn't be able to find a job, but I was able to find one pretty quickly. So that was good.
If you have the means, like understanding the concept of free will is such like a relief.
Yeah.
Like, because I mean, because we forget that we truly can do whatever we want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like make a plan, be responsible. Like I mentioned earlier, like I gave myself a time limit. I had some savings, like, you know, it wasn't completely out of left field, but it was definitely like I was almost telling myself I couldn't go yet unless these ducks were in a row. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, actually I can go now, and I can figure out the ducks when I get there within reason. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
Obviously, like, so horrible for 22-year-old you to go through that breakup and have no plan. But that's such a power move of like taking back the power and being like, well, you know what? Like this is my situation. Let me make the best out of it, you know, and doing a whole pivot. And it's essentially put you in a position to get everything lined up to be where you are now.
Couldn't have been in this specific place without having gone to LA. Like there's no timeline where I went straight to New York and like this happened for me. I really think it's all like was ordained in the way that it needed to be, so I could end up in this space. Like even, and it was so funny too, because like the guy who dumped me, his dream was to work on like movie soundtracks. He's a musician. And I ended up working for an agent who represents all the musicians that like make music for movie soundtracks. And I was like, that's so funny, like how ironic. But I do think it's an example too of like not knowing where things are going to take you. I had no idea where LA was going to take me. I had no idea after grad school what I didn't go there intending to work in Hollywood. I think being open to like literally pivoting any which way, like having your head on a swivel and like just being open to going down any path is how you kind of end up building a life that you enjoy. Because if you would have asked me to make a plan, I would have been like, yeah, I'm going to be CMO of some company one day and I'm going to work my way up the corporate ladder. And I would have been so miserable doing that. And like attempting even to do that made me very miserable. And I had that kind of light bulb moment pretty quickly during grad school too. I was like, I don't enjoy this.
Yeah.
I'm not having fun. Yeah.
I feel like so many people do that where they get stuck in something, or they feel like they're stuck in something and they don't pivot, they don't try anything new, they just get a little bit scared to try something new, and then they're stuck in this, like, you know, whatever, if it's a career or a relationship or something, and then you're gonna look back in 20-30 years,
time is gonna pass anyway. That is I saw that tweet one day and that just like changed my brain chemistry. The time will pass anyway.
Yes.
Right.
So do the thing. You're gonna be 40 one day, God willing, anyway. So do you want to be 40 never having tried the thing, or do you want to be 40 and you tried the thing? You're gonna be 40 anyway.
Do you want to talk about a little bit about like what it's like to be pursuing something new with a lot of eyes on you? Because I know we talked about a lot of your DJing journey is on social media and like you work on social media. So what does that feel like to be, you know, a girl in her early 30s just out of the blue being like, yo, I kind of like this. I want to do this. And then maybe hearing all the voices of people outside of you. Like how do you just keep your head up and like, yeah, I am that bitch. Like, this is what I'm doing and it's fun.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I'm gonna try to like put myself in the headspace of when I was actually starting, because I did not start with the intention of like even really becoming a working DJ. I just wanted to learn how to DJ. And I'm also a kind of person that like I use social media very like openly. And like I think my approach to social media is pretty vulnerable and always has been. Honestly, a little less so now than it used to be. I used to share everything. My whole business. I even have my own podcast that I will not say the name of because my business is out there on that podcast. And it's great. But it was fun to do. But yeah, I definitely, like when I decided I wanted to try photography, I immediately made a photography page without any like experience, and I was posting it and I tell my friends to follow it. And like when I started the art business a few years ago and I was making digital art on my iPad, I made a separate page and started posting my work. And like I think when I used to dance, I used to love to take dance class when I lived in LA. That is something I really miss about LA. Dance classes were so much more accessible. But I used to post my little videos from the end of class and post my choreo. I'm not a professional dancer. I just like to share. It's like one of the tenets I realized that like is important to me and is part of how I feel fulfilled is to share the process, and like it doesn't have to be perfect. And so knowing that and knowing I am that type of person, when I bought the controller, like my first video as a DJ is like me opening the box and not knowing how to turn it on. Yeah. And I was like, what? How do I turn this thing on? And like, so the whole journey is documented from the beginning, which I think was intentional. Just in the sense that I like to share the journey and I like to share the process. So it was more just like, hey guys, I'm trying a new thing. It wasn't like I'm gonna be a professional DJ and this is like what I'm doing now. It was just like sharing like I share anything else, sharing like I share my brunch. Like I'm trying a new thing. And I was proud of it. I was excited. I was like, it was fun for me. And then I think when the social content really took off was the Cowboy Carter. Shout out Cowboy Carter, album of the year. Album of the year. I'm so excited for my girl. But that's when it really took off, where I had already built the tiniest bit of a following on TikTok just as like a lifestyle content creator, which I had abandoned because I didn't like it. You know, that's a pattern with me. I said, I don't like this anymore. I'm not going to do it. So I had like a few thousand followers on there from that. But when I started making mashups with Cowboy Carter songs, those like took off. And that is when the like kind of eyes, that's when I began to be more aware of eyes on me, because it was now like 1 million people watched this video. I can't even conceptualize 1 million people.
Some high profile people were sharing it too and stuff.
People were, SZA commented on one of my, I
said, you said, whoa, wait a second.
Hold on, y'all can see me. I think the thing that helps me is I forget that people can see me like a lot. And I think it's a good thing. I think it has helped me. I'm just not, when I post something, I'm just sharing something I like. I'm not aware or even thinking about who is going to consume this or like how they might take it or if they're going to like it. It's not really a thought that pops in my mind when I post and share things, which I think is helpful. It's kind of like a lack of self-consciousness, where I think sometimes you need a little self-awareness, but I think I've managed to kind of like quiet the self-conscious voice and just like share things, and then it'll pop off and I'll be, my biggest video I thought would get like 200 likes.
Yeah, it always happens like that.
I had no idea. It's a transition of me like playing Water by Tyla into Lose My Breath by Destiny's Child, and it's got like 7 million views and like all of these shares. It's like my biggest video by far. Like I think I can't even, Baller Alert, is that a page? That's a page that people follow.
Yeah.
Baller Alert. Yeah, I think like they just shared it and I posted it in like June of last year. Like it's still making rounds. I thought this was gonna get 200 views. I just thought it'd be cute to share me trying a new transition. And next thing you know, everyone like from all over the world is like really resonating with, saying they're proud of me. That's like the best part. People are really nice. I've had a really positive experience sharing. And I think like I definitely hear people when they feel nervous to share, because I see like how negative the internet can be, especially working in social media. I very much witness how negative the internet can be. But I've been really lucky that like when I share things, I tend to be met with a lot of like support and a lot of like, oh, cool, you're trying that. Good job, girl.
Yes.
And I do think part of it is the authenticity and the vulnerability that I kind of weave into it. Like that transition, I think if I had just posted the transition with no text on screen, just like Tyla to Destiny's Child and just shared it, it might have done some numbers, but I put little like annotations of what I was thinking as I did. I was like, oh, this is a hard transition. Here I'm doing this thing. And I was like, I haven't gotten this right yet. So I'm a little nervous, but like I did it and like, and I'm smiling. So I was like, oh, that smile, I'm happy. Like all this stuff. And people were like, they're like, I don't even know you, but I'm proud of you. Cause I took them into the process of like what it really felt like to do it as opposed to like a polished product to offer you. And I think that's why, and even like if you've been following me for a few months longer, you would have seen like me literally opening the box for the first time. Like you've seen the whole process. So you kind of are invested in that way. Even if you have no interest in being a DJ, like everyone can relate to the feeling of trying something new. And so I think sharing the entirety of what that is like is just made it easier in general to continue sharing, because it's like people want to see like real people,
the journey.
Yeah, and people want to see the journey, and people are
Totally.
really actually willing to like support you in that.
Oh my God, that was so beautiful. I feel like,
really
literally, I was like tearing up a little bit because that's so true. And that's so beautiful that, you know, being your authentic self, being vulnerable has been really well received, because there's an idea that the internet is a mean place, which of course there's parts of the internet that are, but that's really great to hear like such a, you know, you're a very prominent person trying new things, like putting yourself out there, and you've been received with nothing but love. And it's so funny because we were actually just talking about that, because I was like, where are my haters? Like I guess I haven't. I know, I'm like, I haven't been big enough, I guess, because I don't have any haters. Like, no, I'm just kidding.
Right. Or like maybe we're just not looking for them. Like maybe they're existing, but like we're just not checking for them. And I think that that's great. Like I might have haters. They might be right around the corner. I got no idea. Yeah. So how can it affect me if I have no idea?
Yes, exactly. So focusing, totally. Yeah. So focusing on the good, and then being vulnerable, being authentic, being well received. I think that's so cool to hear. And I think I just had a light bulb moment too, because you're saying that you're kind of just sharing your journey just to share it, not to there's like not that much pressure on it, and you're just sharing your journey and being like, okay, I like doing this, I'm learning, here, come follow the process with me. And I think a lot of people, including myself, probably hold themselves back a little bit with the pressure of being like, okay, you know, first of all, one, thinking you have to stick with something, thinking that you have to be perfect before you start sharing. And so that's a really, really beautiful way to go about things, of like, okay, you're just sharing just to share. And if people like it, they like it. And if people don't, then they're not going to watch, and that's okay too.
And that's so okay. And I think because everyone likes to present themselves on social media as like so polished and so like finished and like as an expert even. And so I think it's refreshing when someone's like, no, I'm new. Yeah. I was even advised more than once to like stop saying that. People were like, stop, especially when this part, you know, I actually am really good at it. I'm not gonna lie. And I've learned it very quickly. So especially when that became the case and I started getting like booked regularly in New York, and like I was making a name for myself as a DJ in New York, I was advised like, stop making yourself seem so new, stop. But I was like, no, but this is, I think, the appeal. I think this is what people are excited by. Like people want to see like, it's really cool to try something new and discover you love it. And like all of that happened publicly, and everyone's been like nothing but supportive. So I'm really glad that I shared like the process from beginning to end. I'm glad I didn't just try to pop out polished and finished. Yeah. I think it was a completely different outcome.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I like this. Yeah. Maybe I need to take some notes.
As I'm talking, I'm like, damn, I need to remember this myself. I'm doing the same thing to myself again. And I'm like, wait, I don't have to finish it first. I can just share.
Yes, I love it. Okay, well, and we were talking offline a little bit about, I wanted to touch on a little bit about your relationship and your love life, because you have manifested, attracted a really beautiful relationship. And we were talking about how, well, I asked you before we started recording, I was like, hey, what is the cliche true? Were you actually not looking for anything serious? And then that's when, you know, your man showed up. So I would love to just touch on that a little bit. If you have any advice for any single listeners, if they need to focus on themselves, stop putting the pressure on it. Just touching on that.
Yes. And honestly, that is like in line with like the way we've been talking about my story. But like, so I met this man. I met him not even a year ago. I barely know. He's a stranger. No, I'm kidding. I met him in May, though. I met him in May. We just celebrated our 6th anniversary from July. But we met at a time where I actively was not looking for anything. And if you know me, you know, like, I wasn't always like actively seeking a relationship, but I always wanted one. Like that want was like very loud and a constant undercurrent. And I was seeking that person in any man that I was engaging with. And most of them were not up to par, but I was like trying to make them fit, you know, square peg in a round hole. I wanted that so bad. And I was single for like 7 years, truly, after like, not after the heartbreak I was talking about, but the one after that, I stopped dating because I said, I do not have time to be heartbroken because I do not handle it well. So after like healing and taking a break, and I'm looking, I moved to New York and I'm looking and nothing is sticking and it's so frustrating. And it's like, when is my turn? And why am I feeling so shitty? I don't know if I have advice, because the advice is always focus on yourself. And that is what I did. And that is when I found someone. However, I tried to focus on myself for that whole 7 years, but that undercurrent was still there. That want, that like really loud desire was like still kind of like, it almost felt like I was just trying to focus on myself until someone showed up. You know what I mean? And there's kind of no way to like force yourself out of that mindset. The thing that got me finally in the space of like decentering men, like people talk about decentering men all the time. I thought I had, but I really hadn't. And then I did it on accident completely. It was DJing. So I discovered I loved DJing so much. Like I loved this thing as much as I'd ever loved any man. Like I really was just so obsessed with the act of it, how a crowd reacting, like posting a new mashup. I was practicing like just in my free time. I had never seen that kind of like dedication for myself. I really loved it when I first discovered it. And the guy I was involved with at the time, I don't know if I want to call him jealous, but he, I think, felt me pulling away. We were very like unhealthily attached. And I think he felt DJing giving me something that I could have for myself that wasn't him. And he felt me kind of moving away. And I saw him start trying to like poke at DJing a little bit. Like he would know I had a gig and he would pick a fight right before my gig, or he would stuff like that was happening. And like, remember, it only took 2 or 3 times. I was like, I love this thing and I'm not letting you get in the way of it. And I cut him off. And I know I'm not like, I never have like a hard break. Like I never really like am able to like let people go that easily. But this was the first time I was like, no, you're getting in the way of something I genuinely love. And that was my light bulb moment where I was like, oh, I was supposed to be doing this like for myself this whole time. I was supposed to be cutting people off, letting people go when they're getting in the way of me for me. It didn't have to just be DJing, but DJing was the thing that like clued me in, because it was like a concrete thing where I could see you actively trying to sabotage me, like get out of my way. And so that was like literally the moment that I was like, oh, no connection or like being attached to someone is going to replace like the feeling of having something for myself and loving it. So it was all kind of like unintentional. I didn't say like set out to be like I'm decentering men. It was just like you tried to sabotage me, and now I'm looking at y'all funny. But so that happened around the top of last year, and so I had a few months of kind of just like being to myself and not being attached to anyone, and that was also rare for me. Usually I have like a crush or something. I didn't have any crushes. I was and then I met this guy. I was on Hinge, but I was just kind of bored and wanted to go on some dates. I wasn't like looking to like get into a relationship. It was the beginning of summer. I was ready to like have my little summer, have my little fun free time. But when we met, we just connected so quickly and so immediately. I had at the top of the year kind of described the kind of man I wanted to be with, and he fit like all of the qualities he fit. Like it was like I had already like known him.
We love a list. We love writing down what you're looking
for. And also it was a lot of the things on the list were like how I want the person to make me feel,
Oh my gosh,
as opposed to like things I want them to
yes,
have.
Christa, yes.
Cut it. We need to go do our own work.
Yes, I love you.
We got work to do.
It was like, less so like, oh, they need to be tall or they need to be this and that, though he is tall. But it's less of that and more like I want to feel like excited when I'm around him. I want to laugh a lot. I want him to make me feel important and beautiful and all these things, and then also be creative and you know, be a fun person and be personable and like, you know, just like things that over time as you date, you realize, oh, I want this quality in the next person. I had collected all of those and I finally put them all down. And he has a lot of them so far. We're still getting to know each other. I mean, 6 months is not that long to be in a relationship, but he is really, really great. And I'm definitely like, but being in the headspace I was when we met, it's been really interesting because as like much as he's amazing, I in the past have always been like I anxiously attached to the people I'm dating, but this is the first relationship that feels secure. I think. Let me not misjudge because I've been tricked before, but I'm not tricked by my own self. But I feel like I'm securely attached this time. And so that's been kind of an interesting learning curve because it feels different. Like being in a relationship feels very different when you're securely attached versus anxiously attached. Anxiously attached, there's so many ups and downs. Your nervous system is all out of whack. You think that is what love feels like. So then when you're in something that's securely attached, at first I was like, what's missing? But it turns out it was like anxiety is missing. Drama is missing. Like you're not stressed out. You're very confident in this man and how he feels about you, and he lets you know, and he's very clear about that. You're not. There's no questions. And I really had to be like, oh wow, I needed to heal because I really thought that the ups and downs and the questions and the how do I get them to like me was like so important to the process when it like has no business being a part of the process. That's the lesson I've learned in this relationship, which no matter if this is the one or if you know it's for a season, like that lesson is so invaluable because I was like, oh, this is what healthy love feels like. It's not a lightning bolt, it's a warm bath. That's what I like to say.
It's that moment where you're like, oh, the men in the past hated me. Like
they hated my guts. Like, oh my bad. They actually didn't hate my guts. Well, the thing about me, those men were telling me they didn't like me. They were not even they did not like me. They just didn't like me. And that's okay. And that has to be okay sometimes.
Yeah.
You cannot convince someone into liking you. Honestly, sometimes they're not even at fault. They just don't like you. And that's cool. And you gotta let them go. They don't like you. And that is so okay. Don't try to make a square peg fit in a round hole. And so, the combo of all that, I think, resulted in me even just being in the space to be in a healthy relationship. I think if I met him a year prior to when I did meet him, it wouldn't have worked out.
Well, everything happens for a reason.
And I mean, I love hearing this. You're hitting all the nails in the head. Obviously, we're talking about your relationship, but if you can like take this and put this on any other aspect of your life, it's the idea of, okay, asking for what you want, letting it go, and then just pouring back into yourself, like having that self-love, having that confidence, doing things that you find fun. And then of course, all the things are going to come to you. Right?
Exactly. And like, you can't trick yourself into doing it. You can't be like, I'm gonna love myself until like you can't. It's not gonna work. You actually have to just genuinely focus on yourself.
No, I love it. And like, I think even the idea of you being like, whether this is for a season and it's a lesson, or whether, you know, this is my baby daddy, the man I married, the love of my life, like it's still like you maybe surrendering to that and just being like, this is so good for me and I'm learning so much, and I'm still my number one priority. I just get to share that space with someone else is so beautiful, and I'm so happy for you because you deserve the world, babe.
And so do you, and so does everyone listening. You all find a love that makes you feel confident in putting yourself first, and you find those people who also want you to put yourself first. Like, that's the biggest thing I've noticed about this relationship is like we both truly want the best for each other. And if we realized that isn't each other, like we would want the person to move on. And like that we like genuinely mean that. And I've never experienced that before. It's not like no, stay with me forever. It's like I love you. And if I'm not the best thing for you, I love you enough that you should go do something else.
But I want you to be happy.
I want you to be happy. Yes. But as of now, we make each other very happy.
So. That's so beautiful. Well, I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. There's a lot of lessons in there, a lot of wisdom. Christa, you've had a really amazing like journey, and I think you have done an amazing job of like trusting yourself, doing what is best for you, taking the risks and believing in yourself, betting on yourself. And that's really amazing. And we love quotes over here. We didn't ask you, so you might not have one off the top of your head, but do you have any quotes that you feel like are are important to you or that resonate with you?
Yes. I might butcher this one. Okay, well, the first one is the time will pass anyway. I think I mentioned that.
Yeah,
Earlier.
that was good.
But I don't know who said that first or anything, but the time will pass anyway, I think is like, that's one of those ones that just changed my brain chemistry. Like I could dilly-dally, but the time is going to pass anyway. Might as well try it. The other one, so according to Twitter, this is a Japanese proverb. Don't fact check me. I do not know if this is actually a Japanese proverb, but it goes something like, if you're on a train and you realize you're headed in the wrong direction, the longer you take to get off, the more expensive the return trip. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. I think it's true and it's not, but I think it's more true than it's not true. I think to put the pressure of feeling like, oh, I need to get off the train now or else it's going to be so expensive later on. It can be a little limiting. So I'm like, okay, there's like a caveat to that a little bit because it's like everything in God's timing. But I think once you really do know for sure that this is not the path you should be on, it's better to just hop off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can pivot, you can reroute.
Yeah.
But the longer you stay in something you know is not right, this is not like rushing you to figure out if something's right or not. This is when you know it's not right. It is going to be more expensive the longer you wait.
Yep.
Even if just the only thing you've paid is your time. your time is still valuable. So I like that one. That one, when I read that, I was like, ooh. That's something. You got something there. But I just don't want people to feel like they need to rush to figure out if they're on the right train. That is part of the journey. You don't have to rush that part.
That's beautiful. Yes, time is very, very important. 1000%. That was a good caveat too. I love how you worded that. Well, that's amazing. Do you have any last questions? I think we're good.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on. This feels like a huge up level for Olivia and I. I mean, you're our first guest, and like everything.
That's exciting. I'm honored.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been so excited to have you. We have a list of people we want on, and all these people on this list, like, we look up to and feel inspired by, and like we want to hear their voices, and we know our audience is going to take some things from this episode.
Thank you guys so much. I'm very honored to be your first guest, and I really, really, really admire what you guys are doing too. I think putting your voices out there is so much harder than people realize. And so I'm very impressed with you guys for like the consistency and sticking with it and really believing it. I love that.
Thank you. Well, okay, we'll stop recording, but thank you guys so much. We love you all for listening, and we will be back next week. And stay delusional.
Stay delusional and be brave, guys.
Be brave.
You got this.
Pivot, figure out what you want, and you got this.
Yes. Love you.